Hello and good morning. I think that just said I'm live. This is Leanne Phillipson. I am a registered nutritionist, the author and founder of Sprout Right. You can see my book just back there in the corner. So, on this very snowy morning in Toronto, I wanted to talk to you about granola bars. It's something that I get questions about all the time from my clients, and it's a really tough decision to make when it's time to come and find a granola bar for you and your family. It's important to have them in your car, in your bag, or anything like that. Just to have, right now, if it's skiing or skating, if it's hockey, maybe it's still dance and gymnastics with your kids. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit about having something at the bottom of your bag that's healthier than others. So I've got lots to show. And if you would like, please do type into the chat box below and let me know what your favorite is. And I'll make sure that I either look at it now or in this week's newsletter. I'll be writing a little bit more about that and posting a blog as well. So, what goes into a granola bar? Really, granola oats, we might hope. There's a lot of different bars out there today. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the granola bar, but then also kind of just the bars that you can buy anywhere. It's really, really great to think that you're having a protein bar after a workout, after the kids have played hockey or that's gymnastics or something like that. So not all bars are created equal. So let's start off with one of the most popular ones that on Facebook I noted down about a bar called Made Good. So this is one that I've been buying. It's been in my car. My kids have been enjoying it. So for those that don't know, this one is Made Good. So this is a chocolate chip. They also have some other fruit flavor ones too. So these are little granola balls instead, and these are an apple cinnamon, and then there's also a berry one too. So let's break this down a little bit. So I'm going to go through some of what you find on the label of your granola bar. So this one has 90 calories per bar. It's actually quite a small bar. You can see in this. This is the size of my hand. So this lined up with here it's kind of small, but it's 24 grams. So in this one, we've got 6 grams of sugar, which is about a teaspoon and a half of sugar. Those sugars come from brown rice syrup and agave, which is high in fructose. Possibly a little bit of concern for some people. Agave really was such a huge hit on the sweetener front a few years ago before we found out that it was really high in fructose, which is perhaps not the best sweetener for us. So agave is still used. You'll see in a bunch of other granola bars I'm about to show you that it's still in a lot of those. So is it better than high fructose corn syrup? Yes. Is it better than sugar? We're still, the jury's still out on that. So 2 grams of fiber in here, 1 gram of protein. So is this a really good one? I'm really going to let you decide. I want to share with you as much as possible what's in these different granola bars, and then you get to decide. Just because I've used these ones, because these ones have been in my car, doesn't mean that they're going to come out on top today as I go through everything. However, really we've got to learn how on earth do we figure out what makes a good product. And then also it's also too, what do you like? What do your kids like? My kids, of course, love these because they have chocolate chips in them. Kids also love these apple cinnamon ones. It really depends. So these ones are actually very similar, except they've used coconut sugar in this one as well as agave. So even though it's still a Made Good bar, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the ingredients are the same. So more of a traditional granola bar. I think I used to get these in my lunch when I was a kid. So these come in a pack with both of these bars on here. So this is a Nature's Valley product. Now, there's 210 calories in both of these bars. So a 46 gram bar versus a 24 gram bar of this guy. So it is double, which makes sense. Only 3 grams of sugar. And that comes from sugar and golden sugar. So just so you know, I've got Post-its on the back of all of these. That's why I keep looking, so that I can't quite remember all the analysis. 4 grams of protein in this one. So I remember these being really quite dry. I definitely needed a drink to have with these. So I do think that they might be school safe. However, they have another product which is called Lunchbox, which definitely would be school safe, because I get a lot of questions about that. If I want to have a granola bar, I want to make a granola bar. The granola bar that you'll find in my book, the Go Faster granola bar, is amazing. I've made it for years. Absolutely everyone loves it who makes it. And the sweetener in that one is brown rice syrup. So this, for every 2 tablespoons or 30 mils, I haven't checked this one out, is 22 grams of sugar. So it is really quite high, and how it's going to affect your body. However, the lower glycemic index, which comes from a brown rice syrup, is much lower than what we're looking at in a sugar. It's so difficult to really say apples to apples to apples with all of these things. And also with the Go Faster granola bar recipe, again, it calls for almond butter. I use tahini sometimes. I use sunflower seed butter, which I've got here. My favorite, without a doubt, is pumpkin seed butter. Someone asked me, an old client this morning asked me that on Facebook, what can I use instead? Tahini just makes it a little bit too dry and a little bit bitter almost from the sesame seeds, but the calcium, if you use tahini, is off the charts, because sesame seeds are so incredibly rich in calcium. Okay, so back to the school safe Nature's Valley bar. So 90 calories, this is 26 grams, so almost half of that other one, the one that I used to have in my lunch. 5 grams of fiber. I was quite impressed with that number. 6 grams of sugar, so about a teaspoon and a half. 2 grams of protein, a little on the low side if we want to keep our kids going and not crashing, and really not treating this a little bit like it's a chocolate bar, really, that you're putting in their lunch. The sweetener in this is high maltose corn syrup. And an interesting ingredient that I came across in this as well was rice flavoring. So they've added something to maybe give it some more flavor of rice. I'm not quite sure, but it just shows you to really read that ingredient list. And with lighting, I'm not too sure if you'll be able to see this, but that's a pretty hefty list that we've got there, versus the Made Good bar. If I get that up close enough, I'm not sure if we can even get that, but anyway, it's a slightly shorter list. It all depends on the type and all of that kind of stuff, but really you need to be looking at both the ingredient list and then this chart as well. So this is where I'm getting the sugars from. So when I look at this and I see how much sugar is in that, then I have to look down here and see where's that sugar coming from, because in one of these bars, which one have I got here? In one of the Kind bars, which everyone talked about yesterday. Here we are, here's my little Post-it. So these, yesterday on Facebook, lots of people said, I love the Kind bar. That's the one that I use. Give it to my kids. Now, these have a lot of nuts in them, so it's definitely not something that's going to be going to school. So perhaps it's what's sitting in the car for us, for the parents, to be having when we're hungry, because that does happen too. I always get stuck out and I think, oh, why didn't I just put some almonds in my car? So in this bar, it's a 40-gram bar, so it's quite hefty. 180 calories, understandable for a heftier bar, remembering that the Made Good bar is 26 grams versus 40 grams. You have 2 very different products here in terms of calories. So 4 grams of fiber in here, 11 grams of sugar, which is almost 3 teaspoons of sugar. Now, that is because there's so much dried fruit in it. It's got nuts, it's got honey, it's got glucose, and then also this one has a lot of dried fruit. So some dried apricots, which is amazing for iron. It's a really, really good dried fruit to have. Raisins, again, really high in iron. So this is where the confusion comes in what makes a good bar. So because you see that the amount of sugar that's in there, and you think, oh, I'm going to put that one back, which maybe you might do, because this other Kind bar that I have here, which is almond and sea salt and dark chocolate flavor. That dark chocolate, when they say flavor, always worries me a little bit. Why isn't it just dark chocolate? Anyway, this one, 200 calories for a 40-gram bar, so a little bit more than the other. 7 grams of fiber, 5 grams of sugar, so lower because it really just has almonds, peanuts in it, no dried fruit, and then also honey and glucose syrup, which is what's making it sweet. And also, to be honest, you have to have something that's sticky to keep it together, otherwise it's just going to fall apart. So in my granola bar recipe, it's the brown rice syrup that's going to keep it together. 6 grams of protein in this bar, and that's because of all of the nuts in it. Nuts are really high in protein. So if you're thinking about this, sort of in terms of your calorie intake in the day, if your fat intake in the day, your fiber intake in the day, those nuts and seeds also contain calcium, magnesium, all sorts of bone building nutrients. So maybe this is actually a better option for you. So having one that has dried fruit in it sometimes, one that has more nuts in it sometimes, you know that you're gonna have to go for a school safe one if your child is taking it to school. Now I came across this Cliff bar as well. I talked a little bit more about the Cliff bars on Jerry Agar. I'm on radio with Jerry Agar every Friday at 11 o'clock. We're going to be live streaming this week actually again, so if you want to tune into that, it's so much fun to see what happens behind the scenes. I'll be with Barb DiGiulio this week. And we talked about that, and then Cliff actually reached out to me and said that's actually a product which we're changing. So here's some more information about the Cliff bars, and they sent me a few to try out. So that was really, really interesting. I was grateful to understand more about their products. So anybody else that knows about products and stuff like that, feel free to reach out and let me know. So in this Cliff bar, which is dark chocolate and peanut butter, so a little bit more protein maybe, and everyone likes chocolate with peanut butter typically, I think. So 40-gram bar, again, same size as the other kind bars, 190 calories, 3 grams of fiber, 9 grams of sugar, so that's about 2 1/4 teaspoons, a little higher on the protein, which is good, 4 grams of protein. This has peanuts in it, which is where the protein's coming from, tapioca syrup, almonds, and cane syrup. So I haven't actually, other than the Nature Valley, come across one with straight up sugar. Some of the ones I was looking at in the store still have glucose, high fructose corn syrup in it, which I tend to steer away from as much as possible. And then this one, I do like vanilla. So I grabbed this one, Madagascar Vanilla Almond Kind Bar. Here's my little Post-it. So 210 calories, higher again with this one of the 40-gram bar. 5 grams of fiber, 4 grams of sugar, so just 1 teaspoon of sugar is in there. Hefty on protein, 7 grams of protein, nuts, honey, and glucose in here. It's an interesting addition for them to add in the glucose as opposed to something like a honey. So again, if anybody knows more about the Kind Bar and wants to explain that, we would all love to know, including myself. But that one, very simple, not many ingredients on that bar. So the less ingredients, the more, I think, the better. Now, let's take this one. I know a little boy that happens to love these ones and eats 2 at a time. 140 calories in one of these bars, 1 gram of fiber, so really not too much. 3 teaspoons or 12 grams of sugar. This definitely is the one that has the most sugar without having that sugar come from a dried fruit. As soon as you put the dried fruit in there, I'll explain in a second with a Lara bar, that'll make a little bit more sense. 2 grams of sugar in this little guy, and it's a 31-gram bar. Milk chocolate is the #1 ingredient, not surprising because it's absolutely loaded with it on the outside. And the sugar is also glucose. So really having a look at really you can just look at this versus, let's say, this kind bar. We've got nuts, seeds maybe, and no drizzles of chocolate on top of that one. And this one just looks like a kind of chocolate bar, really, with some more chocolate on the inside and some kind of cereal. So this to me doesn't really fit the category of a granola bar. However, many parents would pick it up because it has this great peanut-free symbol on it, and the kids think that it's a little bit of a nice treat at lunchtime. If you're my daughter, she constantly says, "Mom, everyone else has a treat in their lunchbox, and I don't." Well, and then I just apologize and say, yes, your mother's a nutritionist, so no, you're not going to take a chocolate bar with you or anything else that looks a little bit like that for lunchtime, because then I know that they're just going to crash in the afternoon, and that's not good for them. It's not good for their studying or anything, concentration, mood, the poor teachers. Okay, next up, I thought I would grab a special K bar, and I've got some information on one of the other ones as well. So this bar, 170 calories, 45 gram bar, so a hefty, big bar. This is one of the biggest bars that I've got. 5 grams of fiber, 15 grams of sugar. So that is 4 teaspoons of sugar in one of these bars, 10 grams of protein, and in here is sugar and corn syrup. So this one, obviously, compared to the ones I've already discussed, has more of your mainstream, I'm going to say, mainstream sweeteners that in them that you would expect to see more maybe in a chocolate bar or something like that. So this protein, although there's a lot of protein in there, balancing out that 15 grams or 4 teaspoons of sugar is pretty tricky with an actual bar. So, and the last one I've got here, this came from Sherry Lynn. Thanks for adding this in on Facebook yesterday, the Lara bar. So I've eaten these for years and years and years. So what's so unique about the Lara bar is this one, for instance, which is a cashew bar, has 2 ingredients in it: dates and cashews. That's it. That's all there is in it. And because it's so hefty with the dates and the cashews, which are high in fat, 230 calories for this bar, and it's a 48 gram bar. So again, it's a really hefty one. So this is a 45 gram bar. This is a 48 gram bar. Fiber, high 3 or high-ish at 3 grams, 18 grams of sugar. So you might look at that and you think, you've got to be kidding me, 18 grams of sugar? Leanne just said that this one at 15 grams is really way too high. So, but the difference is that this is sugar. So it's corn syrup and sugar, and the place where the sugars are coming from in this are dates. So it's a dried fruit, very high in iron. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go and eat a big pile of dates and think that, oh yes, I'm being super healthy, but that's what's going into this bar. So it's just, again, it's different. It doesn't, I'm not sure if I'm making this easier for you to decide, but what I'm saying is switch it up. So if you have one of these, you know that this is higher in calories. So this with an apple is an ample snack, for instance. Or if you just cannot get to a lunch, this with a lunch would keep you going until you can get back in again. So, you know, good 6 grams of protein in here, and that's coming from the cashews that are in here too. So some of the other bars that I looked into, that people mentioned. Ashley, thank you for your mention of the Vega bar. So Ashley suggested that was what was in her desk at work. Now the Vega bars that I've used a lot more for post-workout, and they're made with that gorgeous pumpkin seed butter. So I have used those. They do have a small layer of chocolate on the outside, which is kind of nice after you've just done a 10K run, or I think the Ride for Heart. When I did that, I had that one for afterwards because that was really tough, and I was also pulling my daughter who had broken her toe in the back. So it was an extra 100+ pounds that I was pulling along the Gardner and the DVP. So my legs needed some serious glycogen going back in there. So it was a great bar to use. But Vega have now brought out some more snack type bars. So for a 42 gram bar, so it's more of a proper bar, 220 calories, 2 grams of fiber, 7 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of protein. Now in this bar is cashews, tapioca syrup, agave, lots of chia seeds, and other high fiber. So again, just every single bar is different. Think about, I think to try and simplify it for you, think about the size of the bar that you want. Are you giving it to your kids? Is this more of a meal replacement type of bar, or is this just I'm hungry and I just need to have a little something? Then that's probably going to be a little bit more of your made good bar. Now I believe a box like this is about $5, and there are 5 bars in there. So cost can be a factor. Now I was actually surprised by this one. The rice flavoring maybe just put me off a little bit, and the corn syrup, the high maltose corn syrup in there. But again, read your labels. if you are desperate and if you have to feed your kids something and you genuinely need to keep something in the car that are other than, almonds, or, right now in Toronto, an apple would get frozen and nobody would eat that, or some sort of trail mix where you're choosing what's going into it, then these bars are extremely convenient and really, really great to have with you at any time. So check out the size of the bar first. If this is something that's living in your desk at work, then you've got to sort of figure out, is this more of a main snack? Is this going with something else? Is this, I have got back-to-back meetings and I am going to have a Lara bar today because I know that the hefty calories are going to keep me going for longer. A great balance of protein and carbohydrate in here, just to keep you going for that little bit longer. So many different bars. I was impressed with that Madagascar vanilla one compared to a more chocolatey version. Sure, the chocolate's going to taste great. This is a dark chocolate, so more nutrients in it. But again, it shows you that even with these kind bars, then you can choose differently. This third kind bar is a fruit one. So that's going to have the dried fruit, great for iron. However, more sugar going in here, but also more fiber. So I come back to you again, trying to choose the best one. Look out for those that have sugar, glucose, high fructose corn syrup, which would be glucose, fructose, and make your choices based on some of the ingredients that are going into this. If you're buying an organic product, then and there's canola oil in it, you're going to be looking at something that is not genetically modified. If you have soy in there and it's an organic product, it's not going to be genetically modified. Anything else that you buy that's not organic, if that's a consideration for you and your family, then check that out too. So that's a roundup of my granola bars. What am I going to go and snack on later on this afternoon? I do think it's going to be the Madagascar vanilla that I'm going to give a try to, and then I will get my guinea pigs, my daughters, to check out the other ones and see what they think. And also I'm going to talk to them about reading the label first, because if it's me just doing it and telling them, then they're not learning as much as if they're actually looking at it themselves, because it's so important to do this. So next week I'm going to talk about a different topic, and we'll share this on our newsletter. So anyone who's new to our newsletter at Sprout Right and part of our community, welcome, welcome. And please, please reach out on Instagram, get in touch. Let us know what you're up to with the food front, and if you've got questions on Sprout Right's Facebook page, on Twitter at Sprout Right is where we are. Ask us your questions. We love delving deeper into these kind of things and checking them out. My question about the amount of sugar in the drinks from 10-year-old Malachi was fantastic. That was one of the ones that I've done recently that everybody really enjoyed, and I'm so happy to just look through all of these foods. So any more ideas that you have, please do share, and best of luck. Go and try some new bars. Take a extra minute or two, flip them over and read that ingredient list, and let me know what you find, because as we put this out more onto Sprout Right's Facebook page, then we're all learning at the same time. Thanks so much. Have a really lovely, lovely day, and if you're in warmer climates, please send the sunshine and the heat our way, because it's kind of chilly. Take good care, and I'll see you really soon.